The moment they sat me beside my boss, the entire ballroom seemed to hold its breath. It was supposed to be a harmless joke, a cruel little dare made by people who thought I was invisible. They wanted to see how long I could survive sitting next to the coldest woman in the company, the woman employees called the Ice Queen when she wasn't around. But they didn't know what I knew. They didn't know what had happened 3 months earlier, when I had found her alone in a dark office after everyone else had gone home, staring at an old photograph with tears in her eyes. And they certainly didn't know that before the night ended, the woman who never showed emotion would turn toward me and say something that would change both our lives forever. If stories about second chances, kindness, and unexpected connections touch your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who needs a little hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to Ripple of Kindness. Sometimes the person we judge as cold is simply someone who has been hurt for too long. My name is Daniel, and until that evening, I was just another quiet employee at a powerful consulting company. I wasn't rich, important, or particularly confident. I had joined the company after my father passed away, leaving behind debts instead of savings. Every paycheck mattered. I worked late, avoided office politics, and tried not to attract attention. My boss, Victoria Hale, was the opposite of me. She was brilliant, wealthy, perfectly dressed, and so emotionally distant that people became nervous whenever she walked into a room. She could silence an entire meeting with one look. That was why my coworkers thought it would be hilarious to seat me beside her at the annual charity gala. During dinner, one of them leaned over and whispered that if I could make Victoria smile before dessert, they would buy me drinks for a month. Everyone laughed. I knew it was a dare, and I knew refusing would only make me look afraid. So when the seating cards were rearranged and I found myself in the chair beside Victoria, I simply sat down and tried to breathe normally. The ballroom was breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers reflected across hundreds of glasses, musicians played softly near the stage, and wealthy guests moved around in elegant clothes. Victoria sat beside me with her hands folded, looking as though she would rather be anywhere else. For the first 20 minutes, she didn't say a word. Then she turned her head. I expected a warning or perhaps a cold question about why I was sitting there. Instead, she quietly asked whether I was enjoying the evening. I almost laughed from surprise. I told her honestly that I was mostly trying not to spill anything on my borrowed suit. For the first time, something changed in her expression. It wasn't exactly a smile, but the corner of her mouth moved slightly. Across the table, my coworkers noticed. Their eyes widened. The dare suddenly became real. But I wasn't interested in winning anything. I noticed that Victoria barely touched her food. Her fingers trembled slightly whenever she reached for her glass. Everyone else was celebrating, but she looked like someone carrying a sadness no expensive dress could hide. When the orchestra began playing a slow melody, I recognized it. My mother used to play the same song on an old piano when I was a child. Without thinking, I mentioned it. Victoria froze. She asked where I had heard the song. I told her about my mother, about the little apartment where she used to play whenever she was worried, and about how she had taught me that people sometimes needed kindness more than advice. Victoria looked away. For several seconds, she said nothing. Then she told me that the song had belonged to her younger sister. Her sister, Emily, had died 8 years earlier. Suddenly, the woman everyone called heartless looked completely different. Victoria explained that Emily had been the only person who could make her laugh without trying. After their parents died, Victoria had become responsible for everything. She worked constantly, protected her sister, and believed she could control every danger in the world. But one night, Emily had needed her. Victoria had been in a business meeting. She didn't answer the phone. By the time she returned the call, it was too late. She had carried that guilt ever since. I didn't know what to say. So I didn't give her some perfect speech. I simply told her that missing one phone call did not mean she had failed someone she loved. Sometimes life gave us moments we could never repair, no matter how much money or power we had. Her eyes filled with tears. She quickly looked down, embarrassed. I quietly placed my hand on the table, not touching her, just letting her know she wasn't alone. For the rest of dinner, we talked. Not as boss and employee. Just as two people. She told me about Emily's favorite flowers. I told her about my father's terrible cooking. She laughed when I described how he once burned an entire pan of eggs and insisted they were supposed to taste smoky. It was the first time I had ever heard Victoria laugh. But then the evening took an unexpected turn. During the charity auction, Victoria suddenly received a message. Her face lost all color. She stood and walked toward a quiet hallway. I followed because something about her expression frightened me. She was standing beside a window, staring at her phone. Her company was facing a serious financial problem. A major investor had secretly withdrawn support, and someone inside the company had been leaking confidential information. If Victoria couldn't find the person responsible, hundreds of employees could lose their jobs. She looked exhausted. For the first time, I saw the woman behind the title. She wasn't cold. She was terrified. I remembered something from work. 2 weeks earlier, I had noticed unusual access records connected to an executive account. I had mentioned it to my supervisor, but nobody had taken me seriously because I was just a junior employee. That night, I told Victoria what I had seen. She listened carefully. The next morning, she asked me to help investigate. What followed were several difficult weeks. We worked late, checked records, followed financial transfers, and eventually discovered that one of the company's most trusted executives had been selling confidential information to a competitor. Victoria could have fired everyone involved. Instead, she protected the employees who had been manipulated and personally took responsibility for the mistakes that had allowed the betrayal to happen. Something changed between us after that. She became warmer with the staff. She started eating lunch with employees instead of alone in her office. She began asking people how they were doing and actually listening to their answers. And I realized something important. Sometimes people don't become kind because someone lectures them about kindness. Sometimes they become kind because someone finally treats them with kindness when they least expect it. Months later, another gala arrived. This time, there was no dare. Victoria personally asked me to sit beside her. The same ballroom glittered around us, but everything felt different. When the music started, she looked at me and quietly thanked me for that first evening. She told me that she had spent years believing strength meant never allowing anyone to see her pain. That night, sitting beside me, she had realized that perhaps strength could also mean allowing someone to stay. I smiled and told her that I was glad I had been sitting there. She reached across the table and gently squeezed my hand. Around us, people continued laughing and celebrating, completely unaware that two broken pieces of two different lives had somehow found a place where they fit. The dare that was meant to embarrass me had given me something I never expected, a friendship, a lesson, and a second chance to remind someone that being strong did not mean being alone. And Victoria learned that sometimes the smallest act of kindness can reach the deepest wound. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who needs a reminder that kindness still matters, and subscribe to Ripple of Kindness for more stories about second chances and unexpected connections. Before you leave, comment, "Kindness changes everything," if you believe that one small act can change someone's entire life. Because sometimes, the person sitting beside us isn't there by accident. Sometimes life puts them there because they are exactly who we need at that moment.